Welcome to Blackford's Evaluating AI RSNA 2019 webinar. Today we're joined by Blackford CEO Panter and Michael J Cannavo with Blackford Platform. What we're discussing today is navigating the way through the myriad of AI applications at RSNA this year, particularly in the AI showcase. And to start with that, Ben will be giving an overview of the AI showcase and the types of companies involved. Before we start, everyone will be on mute. And if you'd like to ask a question, these will be addressed at the end of the webinar. And to ask a question, please add these to chat. Over to you, Ben.
Great. Thank you for that. So we're going to start off just looking at the state of AI and what you're expecting to see at RSNA this year. So first of all, the really obvious point is that there's been considerable growth over the last 3 years in AI, in radiology in general, but particularly at RSNA. You know, back in 2016, there were a few clinical application companies exhibiting. 2017, we saw 44, 2018, 70, and then this year, there's going to be 129 companies exhibiting as part of the AI showcase. As well, the amount of funding that's going into medical imaging AI startups is increasing exponentially. You know, we're up to $700 million invested in the last year in over 50 deals. Now, the key thing is that we're now seeing some of these large investments actually delivering applications that have regulatory approval. There are now 54 applications that have FDA clearance in place. You can see the split down there, that the majority of them are in the neurosphere, but we're seeing good representation in other areas too. If you look at the histogram at the bottom there, you can see that half of these solutions actually got their clearances just last year. So really what we're expecting to see is some deployments in the field, hopefully the start of revenue generation for these applications, and some kind of track record of their utility and their value propositions resonating in a hospital or radiology group environment. Now, all of that comes together to support CV Insight's view that, it's a maturing industry. So let's move on to the showcase itself. Now, if you look at the showcase, as we said, there's a significant growth in the number of companies. The global spread of those companies is pretty wide, and the split of companies in terms of their FDA clearance, there's 42 companies that have a product that holds either a 510K or de novo clearance, 64 that don't appear to have any clearance, and 23 that for whatever reason don't require clearance. And obviously, caveat emptor, you need to make sure that you're comfortable with that before you deploy it. If you look at the split there's the traditional vendors, which all have a kind of satellite booth within the AI showcase. And if you already buy from these vendors, then pop by and see what they're doing in the AI space. There's the mature SMEs. Typically, these are companies that have the product widely deployed, supported in the main part by product revenues, and the likes of iCAD, Cortex, Rapid Ischema View, ourselves. There's the AI big hitters that are heavily VC backed, typically 30 million plus invested, and getting certainly some initial sales traction at this point. The Zebras, the Analytics, the Arteris, the AI Docs. And there's also the new startups. So typically less than 10 people in the team, some level of bootstrapping, perhaps some initial investment, and often very focused on particular conditions. And this is a really exciting area where you're looking at products that are either absolutely ready for market or perhaps not quite. It's really interesting to see those companies. And again, if you look at the split by application type, there's no kind of clear gaps or or real leaders there. There's something for everybody at the show. Now, with this huge volume of studies, I think the key challenge is going to be trying to work out, well, where do I go? How do I make sense of all this? And I'm delighted to introduce Mike, the Paxman, to give us his insights in that. So, Mike, I'm just going to hand over to you.
Great. Thank you, Ben. I do appreciate it. Making sense of it all is something that's kind of hard to do because there really is no sense to this market sometimes. There are three different approaches that are being looked at and are being done. The single algorithm provider, the vast majority of companies, they're probably 85% of the companies are single algorithm providers, is where they write an algorithm and offer it to the marketplace and have it integrated, hopefully, with their packs. Some of the companies are starting to partner with others right now, which is a good thing because it takes a lot of money to make it in this marketplace. Consolidators are those that offer many different solutions from many different partners, but a single point of integration. Blackford happens to be one of those integrators. You have Envoy Envoy AI, Nuance, and a few others who are consolidators. And you have the all-in-one solution where you can get multiple algorithms from a single vendor, and that would be a Zebra, for example. So, if you're looking at more than one product, as most people are, you really need to look at a consolidator because you've got a single point of interface and multiple applications that you can put together. The big question, the one question, probably the only question that you need to look at when you go to RSNA and look at the 129 people in the AI showcase and probably easily another 30 or more on the main floor is, does the algorithm that you're looking at have the FDA's 510K clearance? Only 1 in 3 people have that clearance. If they don't have the clearance, then you have to ask, what is your status? Is it pending, or have you not filed for it? Need to understand, and this is crucial, that you cannot use, attach, or reference any AI findings in the final report unless the application has a 510K. It is a legal liability issue, not just for the radiologist and radiology group, but also for the hospital and anyone else that is associated with the final radiologist report and the study itself. Return on investment is something that is extraordinarily difficult to show in terms of hard dollars. PACS was easy when you talk about the elimination of films, the elimination of file rooms, and things of that sort. AI are more soft benefits, like increasing radiologist efficiency, allowing radiologists and departments to work faster, providing a value add for the referrals, a higher quality of care, and that for the patients, and of course, increasing volume. If you can do a non-imaging procedure and replace it with, or an imaging procedure with a non-imaging procedure, or eliminate that second study entirely. There are a number of advantages and benefits that AI has, and we can make an entire webinar on that. But the main things are making it faster and making it better in terms of the treatment plans. What's the impact on workflow? There are two approaches that people take. One is a dedicated viewer, which requires a manual intervention. The second is where the results are added to the study. The study is taken, it is sent up to either the cloud or to a dedicated server, on site. It is processed in AI and sent across with the radiology study itself. So when the radiologist views the images, he sees the AI report that has already been processed, and that's viewed in the standard pack viewer and incorporated. Workflow is key, and the one where the results are added to the study is really the way to go. It's easiest if you don't have to have a dedicated viewer, because then you're avoiding what's called the swivel chair radiology approach. External viewers, there's a lot of discussion on it with the universal viewers and things of that sort, but a lot of times these add complexity to the radiologist, and it's not seamless in terms of the approach. So the technical requirements. You have to figure out if it's going to be processed in the cloud or done on premise. Either way, there is no way that you can go ahead and do AI processing on an existing server, specifically a PACS server. It has to be a dedicated server. So you can do it in the cloud, you can do it on site, or you can have a hybrid between the two. Network requirements are key. If you're going to send it to the cloud, you've got to make sure it's fast enough, comes up and back, comes back down again. And how you handle PHI, protected health information, or patient health information, is also key. You need to make sure that you don't have any HIPAA violations accordingly. What is the interface to the PACS? You need to know who does it. A lot of PACS vendors do not work with every AI vendor. So first thing you need to do is to go to your PACS vendor that you happen to be using and make sure that they have done an interface to that particular vendor, or find out what the requirements are. So you find out from the PACS vendor what's required, from the AI vendor what's required, what the costs are, and how long does it take. You want to see if it's been done before. You definitely don't want to be the first. And does the PACS store the reports, or do you? Those who have an archive, you have AI reports that now will increase the volume of studies that you're saving and decrease the volume of storage that you currently have. And then you've got to look at maintaining the product. How often are updates released? Typically, you get an update about every 6 months. How long will the version you have be supported if you don't do the upgrades? And then how do you deploy releases? How does the vendor get the releases out? If you, again, a lot of that deals with how you're buying the product. If you're buying it direct, if you're buying it through a consolidator, or if you're buying it through like an OEM or a reseller, how those releases and updates get put on your machines. How's the product licensed? Everybody knows there's no capital out there. I mean, it's most of it is pretty much gone. So there's no vendors in the market that offer CapEx and maintenance together. Most are done on operating expenses, a pay-per-use or subscription model. And of course, the maintenance is typically put in there. The dollars can go anywhere from, on average, it goes between $1 and $3 per study. I've seen some studies as high as 300 though. But you also need to ask, what happens if the volume changes? And then how do they sell the product? Is it going direct? Is it going through a consolidator? Is it on an OEM basis through a provider like a CT provider or an MR provider? Or are they doing resellers? And you have to ask the question, is it better for you to negotiate a new direct deal? Or would you prefer your work to be go through existing suppliers? Vendor stability in this market is really crazy. On average, the absolute minimum that you need to look at in this market is probably somewhere around $50 million just to stay in the marketplace. So you've got to look around. Is the vendor around for the long haul? What's the track record? How many sites do they have installed? Are they financially stable or dependent on VC cash? The vast majority of vendors in this marketplace are being underwritten by venture capitalists. So those companies that are more stable and that are doing better are the ones that have products outside of just AI and are generating revenue as well. Although the companies that are in the AI market and are underwritten by VCs can make a go at it as long as they're selling products out there and getting a larger installed base. You've got to look at how many sites are installed. The vast majority of sites, not all by no means, but the vast majority of sites are either considered trials where the site tries it for 3 months or 6 months, or have been significantly discounted to the point where it's almost free, 80% or 90% discounts. They're Are they similar size to your own practice? A lot of people can't relate to a Rush Presbyterian or a Mount Sinai if they're a small 300-bed or 200-bed community hospital. So are they similar size? Can you show me someplace that's using AI that's similar in size to me? And then you have to ask yourself, would you rather be the first install or the 100th install? And the best answer is somewhere in between. Probably 10th or 12th would be good. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Greg, and we're going to take care of an attendee poll.
Thanks, Mike. So for today's poll, we'll be looking at excluding the clinical clearance, what is your main consideration when evaluating AI in radiology? So please answer the poll in the right-hand chat screen. We'll just give this another 20, 30 seconds. It looks like clinical workflow is predominantly the main choice at present. Okay, it definitely looks like impact on clinical workflow is the main one there. We'll now go back to Ben, who will discuss a little bit more about Blackford's approach to all of this.
So thank you, Greg, and thank you, Mike, for that insight into how to evaluate make sense of the AI vendors that you can see at RSNA. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to also present Blackbird's approach and really how we look at this problem. So the reality is that it's very hard to procure, deploy, use and maintain clinical applications. There's all sorts of stakeholders, there's all sorts of technical requirements, legal requirements, and steps that need to be taken to bring any of these clinical applications on board. What Blackford does is it provides a single platform for the delivery of clinical applications, AI, etc., in medical imaging. And we have a curated marketplace of different vendors that have solutions that we've carefully vetted and made sure that they are appropriate to our customer base. So if you're a hospital, an imaging center, or a radiology group, and you're looking to try and bring AI solutions into your environment, using the Blackford platform, we believe, is the most straightforward and efficient way to do that. And currently, the platform or products based on the platform are in use in 229 hospitals and 356 imaging centers. So what does the platform do? Well, let's just think about it from the hospital perspective for a moment. You do one deployment that has an interaction with one vendor. That means that once the platform is in and live, adding additional functionality, additional products onto the platform is as simple as giving Blackford a call, saying that you want to try that clinical application, that new AI tool, and could it be enabled? It's that straightforward. In terms of the financial processes, rather than having to set up new suppliers with all the detailed admin associated with that, you have one contract that runs through Blackford, or indeed through your existing Blackford channel partner, where you can procure these pieces and have everything come through and be entirely clear and simple as to what you're paying for what product and why. In terms of the processing that Mike covered, whether you're wanting to process locally or in the cloud, Blackford handles all of that side of things. So depending on your particular requirements for your site, we can deliver a solution that works for you. And all of that sits within the workflow for your existing PACS, RIS, and reporting systems. You don't need to install additional viewers. You don't need to customize any of these pieces. It's all designed to be absolutely simple. So let me just go into a little bit more detail there. If you're trying to use your existing imaging systems, you want to be able to deal with the complexity of your own PACS deployment. Now, that might be a legacy PACS, it might be the current system, there might be some disaster recovery going on as well. Effectively, we deal with all of that and solve that entire problem for you. You also want to be able to see which of your clinicians are using which of the apps, which ones are getting you value, and how are they working. So we have a function called the Blackbird dashboard where you can log in and see your site and identify all the current and potential performance concerns and really make sure that the system is working as you wish it to. Also, from a support perspective, rather than having to track down and maintain relationships with all of these different AI vendors, Blackford is your first port of call for support for any of these apps. And really, that dramatically reduces the support requirement that you're going to have. The next piece that I'd like to talk about is the Blackford curated marketplace. Now, as Mike's pointed out, there's a kaleidoscope of solutions out there. And the real task is to try and reduce that down to a set of applications that actually have value for your practice. Now, we host this curated marketplace, so we do the vetting so you don't have to. How do we vet the applications? We look at regulatory clearance, we look at clinical value proposition, we look at the commercial value proposition as well, because ultimately someone has to pay for all of this stuff. We're also looking at integrated platform workflow. Can the product be delivered without impacting your normal clinician workflow? But then crucially, we're also looking at real-world validation. Can vendors point to sites where their product is in use, where there are clinicians that are happy with the output? Now, when we look at our platform partners, we really do focus on trying to understand how there's a sustainable value proposition for each product, especially when actual direct reimbursement via CP code is incredibly rare. Now, there are three main areas, as we've covered in a previous webinar. Radiology efficiency, that's either for the radiologist or for the radiology department. Adding value to referrers, so trying to do what a radiologist would be able to present if they had an hour to report a study rather than minutes. And really trying to find avenues for new utilization, which allow you to drive additional volume through your existing referrer base. And if you want to come and meet us at the show, we'd be happy to talk through all these different applications and how they might work within your environment. So fundamentally, we've got the Blackford Platform, which is a single platform to manage a curated marketplace of imaging applications. We have that curated marketplace, which is a vetted marketplace of imaging applications. And we have the Blackford dashboard, which is a secure dashboard to monitor and analyze platform health and activity. And we really look forward to meeting you at RSNA to expand on all of these issues and give you a demo of all these different products. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ben. We'll now move on to the Q&A portion of this webinar. So if you would like to ask any questions, please do so in the chat screen on the right. Just wait a couple of minutes to get some in.
A lot of it has been due to misinformation and addressing the wrong audience with the AI message. There's a lot of fear, frankly, from the part of the radiologist. When AI first came out, it was AI will take the place of radiologist, and it simply isn't true. AI is going to be a complementary technology for radiologists in the U.S. Down the road, there may be some places, especially in third world countries, where there is not a lot of radiologists, where it may be used in place of a radiologist for things like TB screening. But for the most part, AI is a complementary technology. and not one that is to replace radiologists. And that's why it hasn't grown, is there's been a lot of pushback from radiologists on that.
Thanks, Mike. Ben, anything to add on that?
Yeah, so I think that it isn't necessarily taking so long for AI to be accepted. I think that any change to reading workflow has to be considered and evaluated. I think that it's important to note that the radiology systems and processes already in place are mission critical for a hospital. So, I don't think it's particularly surprising that progress is happening slowly. I think that we're seeing the first real commercial success of various products, and I think that that's really the kind of the bellwether, if you like, that this wave of AI solutions are beginning to be adopted.
Thanks, Ben. Next question. With so many vendors to choose from and a six-figure investment typical, how do I protect the investment made in an AI vendor? Which ones will survive, which won't? Mike, over to you first.
You're going to get me shot saying which ones will survive and which ones won't. The smart companies are those that can that have a very good product and can explain the product to the end users and have it implemented. That's, if there's one weakness that we have in this particular marketplace, is being able to explain the advantages and benefits that AI provides both the hospital and the radiologist. The biggest challenge that we have is there's currently no reimbursement through CMS for AI. So you have to get creative in terms of your doing your return on investment discussions and have somebody at the C-suite level buy into it. Who will survive? Obviously, there's not room. There's 129 vendors in the AI showcase this year and probably another 30 vendors on the floor. There's not room for 160 vendors to provide this marketplace. At best, you're making maybe a couple dozen vendors who will thrive in the marketplace. Some will get bought up, some will merge with other vendors, and some will be acquired. So, Ben, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I think the question was, if you've got so many vendors to choose from and you've got to invest so much, how do you protect that investment? I mean, from my perspective, I think there's a balance to be made between the investment that you're making in a single solution that may or may not meet your needs when you really are getting to grips with it, and the infrastructure to deploy solutions like that. I mean, obviously, I'm biased. We sell a platform, but I think that it's crucial when you're making that investment that you focus on ensuring you're building a sustainable, expandable architecture to plug these solutions into, rather than putting all your eggs in one basket with one solution. And I think that that's increasingly important when you look at the, as Mike says, the huge number of different solutions that are out there, and trying to make sure that you protect yourself from any particular one not meeting your needs or not having the long-term survivability.
Yeah, one of the points, if I could add on that as well, one of the things that we're going to have to look at is right now, for example, there's over 10. It was in one of the first slides. There's over 10 algorithms for brain, for ICH. How do you determine which is the best, which one best meets your need? And if next year a new algorithm comes out that you feel better meets your requirements, with a consolidator, as an example, you can just unplug one and plug in another. If you made the investment in the technology with a single vendor, you're basically just going to toss that technology out the door. So you've got to do everything that you possibly can to protect your investment, because the investment's going to be significant. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mike. So another question for you, Mike. You told us the questions to ask AI vendors. What should we ask platform vendors?
platform in terms of can you be more specific on that? What are you calling a platform vendor?
So that would be a vendor such as Envoy AI or Blackford, for example.
Well, the questions you need to ask obviously are what does it take to get different vendors to be offered. Right now, there's a limited amount of offerings that the consolidators have, and what does it take to bring on an additional company? How will the updates be taken care of? The upgrades be taken care of? How will the billing be addressed? There's a lot of questions specific to the vendor that those particular vendors will have to outline how they work with the end user. So that would be my question: is how do you work? What are the costs? Typically, there is a single cost to do all the interfaces, and how much time does it take as well to add on a vendor?
Thanks, Mike. Ben, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the technical capabilities of a platform are important. It's just as important to distinguish between the approach that says we're going to bring everything on board and let the customer work out which is the thing that works, and the approach that we take, which is to really understand the products and see how they fit into clinical workflows, how they generate returns to your practice, how you interpret that in the wider health system and make sure that the AI solutions that you choose are generating real value. I think as well, important to see, are you buying a platform, or are you buying a whole plethora of other solutions that you may or may not actually be that interested in? But I think Mike's point's all valid as well.
So a good one here for you, Ben. Does it really take 50 million to start an AI vendor?
I suspect that Blackford is living proof that you can do it for a lot less if you're product and revenue focused and you don't necessarily locate your business in Silicon Valley. I think more seriously, with a lean mentality and a real focus on revenue and a committed team, I think it's possible to develop that kind of business with significantly less investment. I'm certainly not trying to diss companies that have taken a lot of investment. I think that they just set themselves a much higher bar to reach sustainability, which means that there's a lot more fragility there. That if you want to have a medical imaging software provider, you're not looking for a company that's going to be here this year and gone the next. You're looking for someone that can support product out for a decade or more. And I think that long-term sustainability is the real key there.
Okay, next question. So wouldn't it be cheaper just to buy the products direct from the vendors?
Do you want me to take that one? So I would say that the deals that we strike with product vendors means that the consumer, the hospital, the radiology group pays the same price whether you buy direct from Blackford or through one of Blackford's channel partners. I think I'd be very suspicious of a company that adds on to the price that you could get from the original supplier, because ultimately that's based on the value for the consumer, and that's a fixed amount.
Thanks, Ben. Next one. How accurate are the studies that compare AI to radiologists? Mike, why don't you take that one?
Most of the studies that I've read say the correlation between AI and the radiologist are in the 97 to 98% range, which is equal to a radiologist, obviously equal to a radiologist. You do have, so the one thing that AI eliminates is interreader variability, because a lot of the programming has been done. It's very black and white. So how do I express this? Restate that again for me, if you would, Greg.
So how accurate are the studies that compare AI to radiologists?
From what we've seen, the studies are accurate. The question is going to be, is it going to be believable? To be quite frank with you, because everybody has studies. You know, one of the challenges that you have is you have algorithms out there that may have 1,000 studies that they were developed against. One that has 10,000 studies, one that has 100,000 studies, and one that has 1 million studies. Which one is more accurate than the others? The answer, surprisingly, is there's not a significant amount of difference between them. Maybe half of 1%. So the more studies you put into it, it's not necessarily more accurate. So we're hitting 98% right now, and I'm fairly comfortable with the accuracy of the studies and the accuracy of the AI models that are being developed.
Thanks, Mike. Ben, anything to add there?
Yeah, so the question was, how accurate are the studies that compare AI to radiologists? And I think you have to really look carefully at the question that's being asked, right? So reading a study is much more than just estimating a volume or finding one particular finding in the exam. You know, the work that a radiologist does is far, far more complex than any of the AI algorithms or AI products that are currently on the market. And maybe a cleaner question should be, how should I interpret studies that compare AI performance to radiologists? And my answer would be with a large pinch of salt. I think that fundamentally the value of the products, the real products that we see on the market today, isn't the accuracy compared with RADs. It's what they add in terms of value to the overall process of radiology. And that's really how these different products should be judged, rather than the very hypothetical algorithmic comparisons that you see frequently in the trade press at the moment.
Thanks, Ben. Mike, another one for you. Is there any risk using AI? Any liability to the radiologist or institution? If AI misses a diagnosis or makes the wrong diagnosis, or AI and the RAD don't agree?
There's no more risk with AI than there is with a radiologist. Something that is not discussed in mixed company is the fact that if AI misses it. You can't sue a company that put together an algorithm. If a radiologist misses it, it goes both to the radiologist and the hospital. It always goes to the deepest pocket. So, you know, is there any risk if they have the studies where the correlation is made, where it's 98% with the radiologist, and radiologist to radiologist interpretation is 98%? I say the risk is minimal to very minimal, if that.
Ben, any additions there?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of echo what Mike says, really, but I think check the indications for use for the product that are included with their regulatory clearance, stick within those indications for use. But as Mike says, the ultimate responsibility for the report lies with the radiologist. If the AI and the radiologist disagree, then the radiologist is the one that has the priority, obviously.
Yeah, everything stops at the radiologist. If the radiologist agrees, then they agree. You're going to find places, again, where the studies have been done, you've seen false positives, you've seen false negatives, just like you do with a radiologist. So the risk isn't any greater with AI than it would be with a radiologist.
Thanks, Mike. So if we're considering a product you don't currently host, can we plug them into your platform ourselves? Ben, I guess that's for you.
Yeah, so we don't offer that service at the moment, but we're very happy to work with your chosen products vendor to bring onto the platform. And it's definitely a complicated process. Please just ask a particular vendor to come talk to us at RSNA, and hopefully we'll have some good news for you.
Yeah, hey Ben, I've got a question for you on that. What do you do with a lot of these academic facilities that are developing their own algorithms? Would they be considered a commercialized product, or how would that work?
Yeah, I think that it's a really interesting question, because if you look at the robustness of those kind of applications, typically they've been trained in one location They maybe are particularly sensitive to changing the modality that the studies were acquired on. I think there's a huge amount of productization that's required there. And we're very happy to talk large academic centers through that process. But equally, I think it comes back to the idea of, are we a clearinghouse for AI? We offer the curated marketplace of products that we understand work in all environments. And, where that particular amount of diligence has been done, certainly I'm not averse to a conversation to help a large academic to productize their algorithms, but that's not something that Blackford would take on. We have worked with a number of sites to basically use our platform infrastructure to help them deploy their own solutions, but that's very much on a case-by-case basis.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. So next one, Ben, we'll go to you first with this, I think. What impact, positive and negative, is there on workflow with AI?
I guess that this really depends on how the particular tool is integrated into the clinical workflow, right? I think solutions that require a separate viewer or even context switching for an embedded viewer risk breaking radiologist workflow. When you sit down in a reading room and you see radiologists reading studies, it's pretty clear that efficiency is absolutely key. Now, the cleanest implementations that we see today are ones that generate DICOM secondary captions that fit within the existing PACS viewer, that perhaps have a structured report that can be passed into the reporting system. But simple is better at the moment. Anything that requires more clicks, launching a different program, going into a web viewer, just adds complexity. And I think that there you have to be very careful because you can break workflow very easily.
Just a side question, Ben. What's the typical workflow with PACS when we're looking at integrating AI into that workflow?
I think that the idea really is to have it as seamless as possible. So if you're thinking about the orchestration of how do you make AI happen, ideally you would, from a radiologist or a radiographer, tech perspective, you would just see the results. You wouldn't necessarily know what was going on to drive all that stuff to arrive in your viewer, because frankly, it's a distraction. Now, one of the things the Blackford platform does is handle all of those interactions with the modality work list, modality itself, working out which studies are relevant for which different AI algorithms, and bringing all that back into the radiologist's study in the PACS.
Thanks, Ben. Mike, anything to add on that?
I think Ben covered it fairly well. I mean, a lot of this depends on if it's an integrated viewer with the PACS or if it's a standalone viewer, and also how the workflow is set up. Ideally, what you want to do is have the AI report and images available when the study comes across to the PACS. So all they have to do is reference the AI report and images and not have to wait for it. AI can actually, in theory, if the workflow isn't set up correctly, can slow down a radiologist. That's why it's crucial to understand how the workflow needs to be set up so that you can optimize the radiologist's time and improve the quality of the reads.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, so we'll start wrapping up now with one final question. So, Mike, we'll go to you first. Two radiologists can differ on a finding. Can two AI applications differ? Absolutely.
It depends, again, on the data sets, how they were programmed. If two AI programs didn't differ, at least now and then, there would only be the need for one ICH, one breast, one liver, one MSK algorithm. So yeah, the short answer is yes. They can. Does it happen often? Not really. Ben?
Anything to add there?
Yeah, so the question was, two radiologists can differ on a finding, can two AI systems differ as well? I mean, I think yes, certainly they can, but again, it's important to remember that although there is a lot of academic interest in whether algorithms agree, it's not really relevant to the products that are out on the market in use today. For all the hypothetical talk of running 10 algorithms against each other, voting logic and all that kind of thing, the reality is that purchases are made on solutions to problems rather than complex tech. And typically, once a site determined which algorithm, which product they wanted to use, that would be deployed and used.
Thanks, Ben. So that draws us to the conclusion of today's webinar. Thank Mike and Ben for everything today, and thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you at RSNA. Thank you. Goodbye now.